Hello and welcome to Season 2 of Teacher Talk, the podcast for teachers who are lifers but still want to have a life. I'm Jared, and as always, I'm joined by my partner, Johanna. Hey, Johanna.
Hi, Jared.
What are we going to talk about today?
How to use incentives.
Incentives.
We gave a big menu. You taught me a word.
Menu.
Yes. We used a big menu last time, and then today we're going to talk about how to use these in the classroom with students.
Refresh me on some of the menu items, just real quick.
Everything from puzzle day, card tournaments, using different, like...
Oh, that's right, euchre. I
remember. Yeah, okay. Like deciding it's extra PE, art, music, time.
Got it.
Yeah, there was a bunch. I don't know. Over 10.
So now we have the tools.
We have the tools.
In the tool belt.
We do.
Or really, it's more like the toys in the toy chest.
Toys in the toy. Yeah, you declared that now no one's going to learn anything because they're going to have all these incentives.
Well, but you have a plan.
I do.
How do you deploy your arsenal here?
Okay, well, now we're really stepping up and actually asking you to do a lot, Jared.
Me?
Yes.
Personally?
You
Or
personally. Like
me as the substitute for your
listener?
No,
you as the interviewer. Okay, so here's what we know. I am extremely good at motivating kids to do really hard work and doing it for long periods of time, but I'm not 100% sure how I do that.
Oh.
So I think I have some ideas. Listeners, what you don't know is that normally I do the prep work and the pre-thinking work for these podcasts, and Jared kind of comes in blind. This time, we're going to I struggled. I know that others see what I am able to create as kind of magical, but I'm not 100% sure how to have others have that same magic. So that's where you come in, Jared. We're going to find it out together.
Oh, I don't know.
I think you will. I think you're good enough at asking me questions that I'll figure it out.
Well, we'll get it in editing, maybe.
Okay.
We send it to the VFX house when we're done.
I don't know what that is.
It's visual effect. It's when...
Oh, yeah.
When you film a movie, now you got to have them draw a bunch of cartoons on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Martin Scorsese loves it.
Okay.
All right. Yes. So I have seen your classroom, what I would call classroom management, like the ability to have kids on task doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Yes, my learners are very focused. Even if it's not fun, they're very focused and on task. That's just true. That's just a fact.
And it does seem like they are ensorcelled.
Yes,
it looks like you cast a spell on them. It is weird.
I have gotten that comment before. I build internal motivation, which is weird because I just listed off a bunch of external motivating things that I have used.
But we talked about it a little bit the last time. I think the key element is you eventually success becomes its own reward or its own habit or something. It's the incentives can be deployed in the first phase where there isn't any kind of feeling of reward yet.
Ooh, okay. I think you tipped on something. So one difference, I would say, or one essential element to creating a positive experience as a teacher with incentives is that you don't lead with the incentive.
Don't lead.
Right. So when my students are exposed to the learning, they are exposed to the learning in chunks. And the chunks in the beginning are extremely small. So if they're kindergartners, my chunks of learning are basically what a preschooler could do. So it's actually a little bit backwards. So the kids instantly know that they can do it. Like there's no question in their mind that every single one of them are like, oh, I can do that. And then the chunk of learning never lasts longer than their age. So a task for a 15-year-old, the chunk is never more than 15 minutes. So a 5-year-old, it's never more than 5 minutes. And it's already, the first beginning chunks of the learning are stuff they already know how to do. But I don't call it review. I create this sense of a game. Like Like when you start a video game, you know you're at the start.
Oh, yeah.
And you know that you can see into the future the next couple of steps, but you don't see the whole thing, all the details. You just see the little first bit.
Well, that's a good analogy because video games are designed to be anti-challenging at the outset.
Yes.
You want to learn the mechanics of the game, the way the game works, but it's designed for you to be successful at it.
Yes.
So that you can feel it and know it. And then the challenge comes later once you know you can do the elements of it.
Yes. So.
Very interesting.
Okay. So let's talk about ninth graders writing debate cases, because if you've ever attempted to get a 14-year-old after they've already had a full day of school to learn how to research and write a debate case, I mean, if you've ever read one, I mean, it's a collegiate level of work that the students are doing after school. There's no grade attached. They could quit at any time. And so I think it works as a really good example for how I use this, even if the content switches out. But the hardest thing I've ever tried to do this with, like math was easier. Science was easier.
The most extreme need for student motivation.
Yeah, like an industrial tech room was easier. A business class was easier. This was the hardest
Got it.
I've done.
That makes sense. Lay it on me.
Okay, so the first couple of tasks are very simple, and then they're essentially given an instant opportunity for praise right after they do the task.
So what's the difference between a chunk and a task?
Good question. Essentially the same thing, except for the chunk might include multiple tasks.
Okay.
So, like, let's say I was having students learn how to debate. So I would first have them read something that I knew only took 5 minutes. I would then have them pick an argument aside. And then I would give them a template that was already done, and they were just filling in the blanks. And it would be something super silly and super fun, like maybe they read about dogs and cats, and now they have to pick a side, which is better, a dog or a cat, and they're using evidence from that reading to say why they're right. So 3 tasks all chunked into one piece, the whole chunk, 15 minutes or less.
And then they do that, and they come to you, and then you click the little thing and give them a treat.
Essentially, yes. So as soon as they're done, they get to stand up right away. So they're not waiting for everyone else to finish. So it feels a little bit like a race.
Sure.
And then I read through it, and if it's not right, then I'm providing instant feedback about how to fix it. They go and fix, and then I'll offer them. So it's not a question of if they're going to fix it. It's do you want to sit with me and fix it so you can get help, or do you want to go back to your seat and fix it on your own because you think you know how to do it?
Sure.
So they're also learning right away, kind of almost like a video game. Like if I don't jump on the little dude just correctly, I die and I have to start over, but it doesn't feel so bad because I just started.
Yeah.
Yeah, like it feels light.
Right.
Right.
It's the quickness of it, the bite-sizedness of it.
Yes.
Is what makes that work both directions.
Yes. So once they do a series of tasks that are, and then I've confirmed that the tasks are meeting tasks. That's a hard word.
It's a weird word.
Yeah. And so this is where, like, when I've worked with teachers who teach like more formally, where they're having kids like fill out answers or something, their instinct is to want the kid to do the whole page. And it's better if you just draw wherever it is. Question 4, draw a line. If that took them 15 minutes or if that took them 8 minutes because they're 8, that's when they're instantly getting feedback that they're right on track and meeting your expectation, or no, they are not. And then that is where your incentive starts to play in.
Right.
Okay.
So they did one thing for 8 minutes, and now they play euchre for the rest of the school year?
No. Now they pick their skill level for euchre.
What's that? What?
So they're going to write so we're going to be playing, for all of the debate season, we're going to be playing at a tournament. And I'm going to pair people up based on skill ability. And then I'm going to pair you into groups based on skill ability. And they'll always be running a high-low tournament. And so you need to rank yourself. I know nothing about euchre. I at least know what the word euchre means, and I've played card games before, or I've played euchre before. And you can use any incentive.
And then the highest rank is I know how to spell euchre.
I don't even know how to spell euchre. But it's a 30-second dip in the water to this thing that's going to be fun.
It just gets them looking at the goal.
Looking at the goal.
Making the goal seem real.
Yeah.
Okay.
Then we're going to do another chunk of learning that takes also 15 minutes. Then we're going to do another thing involved with the incentive. So the thing is it does kind of feel like a race because you're going to start to hear other kids signing up or doing their thing, but it's not like people are like, well, they'll just rush through the learning to try and get to the thing. Yeah, they will. You set the standard and don't change the standard and don't make it personal.
Mm-hmm. It's no more personal than when you jump in front of the Goomba and Mario goes,
Yep.
It's
not okay. Do you need help?
Go back to the checkpoint.
Yeah. Do you need me to reteach you how to do it, or like if you act like it's a game, they'll start to treat it like a game. So kids would come up to me when I taught like curriculum, and they had to go read something, and then they had to answer like 4 questions, and then the checkpoint was I read the 4 questions, but then also I had questions, and they had to randomly draw one that wasn't one of the 4 questions, but was in the reading. And if the kids didn't know the answer to the random question, then I'm like, go look it up. We'll try again. And then they'd have to come back up. They'd have to answer the question they didn't know, and they'd have to draw a new question. But like, if you make it silly and fun, like a game, they will instantly buy in. Like, you don't call it a game, but they will buy into the game mentality. Like, they'll start like being like, oh, dude, I missed that one too. And then like they go back and they work together as a team, and they'll start talking to each other about like, well, what other questions were there on the thing? And you might be saying like, well, that's cheating. For them to purposely discuss with other peers their learning.
No.
Like, shoot.
What a tragedy.
Like, they start to work as a team to like help each other. And it feels fun. And they don't notice how hard they're working because it feels so fun.
Well, this is really coming together in my mind here as you describe it.
Okay.
Because unfortunately, I've only watched people play video games. I'm not very familiar with them.
Yes, exactly. You're not familiar at all with a video game.
But it's like, I've never, after tens of thousands of hours of video games, I never thought about their design very much. But yeah, this is what gamification, I think people, like, I have this concept of people learn all these things in like business jerk books or in like self-help books and stuff, and I call it the words but not the music problem. And you can learn strategies like, oh, gamification is really effective at creating motivated people, and then you do what superficially looks like a gamification but isn't actually executing the design of how games work, right? And then nothing happens, and like, oh, well, we read about a strategy and it didn't work. This is actually the design. This is why it works.
Yeah, and that's why I think people have struggled with incentives, is because they put it on this pillar that we're all reaching towards, instead of just weaving it in with the learning. So, like, essentially, kids, for an hour and a half practice, might have only spent 5 minutes dealing with the euchre stuff, right? Mm-hmm. But then slowly what happens is like, okay, now you're going to watch one of the tasks you're going to get done, and you're going to go watch a little video on how to play the game. And then slowly the tasks build up, and now you're going to get assigned your partner. And then the tasks slowly build up. And then eventually you do get to the point where we had a practice where everyone had written their case and everyone had a really well done case. And then we had our first real tournament. Now, if we hadn't gotten everyone's cases written in advance, essentially, then we would have had to wait to have the tournament because once you got your cases, you still got to learn how to debate them and all that stuff. But the game part makes it so you go ahead of schedule. Like, not right away, because right away you go slower. Mm-hmm. But as kids start to learn to work hard, and then they don't even notice when the game disappears. So like in my current classroom, the game starts out as tickets. For the most part, I only do whole class tickets. And then sometimes, particularly with move-ins, I do tickets more often. But I don't use them to like store up and then you buy something. That doesn't cause the same response. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Like, you never want your incentive to become a currency, because then the kids are working really hard for a currency. And if you take the currency away, or then you don't provide the currency, then like they're not going to work hard anymore.
You don't want it to be like a job. You don't want them to like work for a pay in this fake currency.
I don't think they can hear the cat. So I say we just leave it. Yes.
Sweetheart, what do you want?
I think that it's really hard for a 6-year-old to combine a trinket that they get at the end of the day with doing the right thing in the moment during lunchtime.
Right. That's a lot.
Like, that's too big a jump for how I've found incentives to be most effective.
Yeah.
Incentives are most effective when it's woven into the experience.
So I want to analyze this. So I want to focus on exactly the mechanism of what's supposed to happen.
Okay.
And that, because I keep thinking of Super Mario Brothers.
Okay.
The original.
Maybe the only video game I really have a lot of context with is Super Mario Brothers. So maybe this is some sort of like my childhood coming back.
Well, a lot of people are familiar with that
at me.
Basic design. But so it is what you are setting up for your learning is more or less constant feedback. Positive, yes. And then if it's negative, it's more like it's just natural consequences of like, okay, go back and try again. You're setting up constant feedback at a rate that's roughly equivalent to their age in minutes.
Until they're good at it. Like my kids now that I have can go an entire class time, elementary kids, 45 minutes and not get that feedback. But I've built that up.
The very first step is purposefully very achievable.
Yep, very achievable. And for me, I use, rather than using like an incentive that I described before, which the harder the learning, the more enticing the incentive. So I, in my classroom, get to use the incentive of just liberty. So they do a little bit of learning and now they get to make a choice. And then they do a little bit more learning and now they're making even more choices. And so just freedom and liberty runs my classroom with great intent and purpose. But when you're teaching a harder content, like you can give them all the freedom you want. That's not going to cut it if it's really hard work that they are doing.
But at regular intervals of success, you sort of surface the incentive as to help reinforce the goal. You don't actually have to have the party or the extra PE time or whatever.
Right, but all of these things add up into.
Right.
So for example, you could have, if the incentive was to get extra art time, you could have the simple passing out of tickets, and every ticket equated to so many seconds of art time. And so the whole class as a whole is trying to earn as many minutes of art time at the end of the week as possible. But you don't feed that goal. You don't talk about it in that way. It's just a natural process with the learning, like connected to the learning. Now, I shine away from connecting these to behavior. I prefer to do something different with behavior, because I find that behavior problems, once I get them so connected to the learning, the behavior problems like go away. Like I can think of a couple examples this week where by redirecting the student to the learning, the behavior's changed.
Right. And it's a bad idea you're not trying to do some kind of general, nebulously achievable incentivization of being good as a student and a person. This is the goal is to complete the learning with the constant feedback and with the regular process to make the goal seem real and tangible. Yes.
So like if I was running an elementary classroom and I wanted to have a spoons tournament, maybe what the kids earned was cards. So we need so many decks. So by every kid completing a chunk of the learning where they're getting that feedback from you and they're meeting their goal, they're earning a card. And then once the whole class has enough cards and enough spoons, then you can have your tournament. And if someone's having a behavior problem, let them have that time that they need. But when you see that they're ready to re-engage, you can be like, oh, we only need to do 2 more things and then we earn a card. Do you need help doing these 2 more things, or do you just want to do them right here by yourself?
Right.
And sometimes you physically, like with a 6-year-old, you physically show them the thing that they are going to get. But you want to be careful to not have it be like too grandiose, that it's like only the things that you want them to constantly feel like in the moment they have control over getting this thing. But that it's not about the thing that they... Am I making any sense? This is my problem. I don't know that I'm making sense.
Many of the words make a lot of sense.
Well, I feel bad because in so many ways, this is going to be exactly like what other teachers have already done. And they're like, this doesn't work. But there's this small little tweak that when you give it to it, it does work. It works really, really, really well.
In our remaining time today...
Yes.
I want to talk a little bit about, I think we got more to talk about with this generally, but...
Well, I have a really good one that's connected to bridge building that we're going to save for a different episode.
For now, the people avoid my words but not the music problem. So give me an example of things that it seems like you're trying to incorporate incentives, and you are, but it's just doomed not to work. Like,
okay.
I gotta tell you, one would be like, all right, class, if you're all good and good learners for the entire semester, you can have a pizza party at the end. Like that won't do it.
Right. A more common example would be something that as an individual person, you have very little control over the success, but you have a ton of control over the failure. Like
if we're all quiet for 5 minutes.
Sure. I don't think a teacher would ever do that. But let's say that. When you evaluate your system, if one kid can cause the whole thing to be epic fail, or like even if you pretend like that kid didn't epic fail it, but all the kids are like, no, that was we violate, like if the rules of the game are, this is the only other game I've also played. There's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle one where like all 4 of the turtles had to stay alive, and if you die, then I think you had to start over or something. If very clearly one person essentially died in the video game, and you as the video game are like, never mind, it's fine, the kids are not going to buy in. So you have to create a system where you don't violate the rules of the game because you're also a player. You're just a different type of player. And so don't make rules where one kid can destroy the game and the other kids have very little control over it going well.
Yeah, and like a lot of your things, you want it to seem like it's just how nature is.
Yeah.
It's not your judgment as the leader of the classroom, because if it's subject to your judgment, then they'll either hold it against you if you're strict or take advantage of it if you're easygoing.
Right.
So students can't. It has to be individually achievable, consistent, natural consequences.
Yeah, and that they'll want to check in with you. So like, if it's focused on behavior, a lot of times you'll see this with behavior. Like if a kid's doing a good thing, then you give them a ticket. But if you have that with the whole class, it can be really hard because there can be 12 kids all doing the right thing and you didn't see it. And then it kind of disincentivizes them to do the right thing unless someone's watching. The same is true with learning. Like it incentivizes the kid to always check in with you so that you always have access to where they're doing. And it's okay to have the rule that like when the red flag is up because you're working one-on-one with a kid, like that a student isn't going to check in with you at that moment. But when the green flag is up, then whatever work they had completed, they can bring up and get credit for all the work. And then you're checking to see that it's meeting your standard.
Or they bring you more steak or pineapple.
I have no idea what that means.
You never been to a Brazilian steakhouse?
No.
Oh. They have one now. We could go.
Oh, okay.
That's how it is. You have a red flag and a green flag at your table.
Really?
And they just keep bringing around different things on like stands, and they cut off pieces for you as long as your green flag is up.
All right. So knowing that we're going to continue to talk about incentives, and we're going to get into the weeds a little bit next time with what I think is one of the best uses of this model I've seen and experienced. Do we have enough here for people to understand what in the world my craziness is saying?
I want one more thing that to not do, or that you will try, that people are vulnerable to trying to do, that just won't be correct execution.
Pointing out the reward. I never ever mention that there is a euchre tournament coming, or that they could lose the euchre tournament, or that they need to do the right thing and get their cases done so we can have this euchre tournament. I never say that because the video game never comes up and goes, warning, warning, warning. If you don't pass level 2, then you can't go get the princess back in level 3. If you stall, you stall. Mm-hmm. Don't take the incentive and use it. I don't know. I think it doesn't work. I think it makes everyone angry. I think it makes a us first them system. I think it gets you frustrated and the kids frustrated because like February will happen and you're going to stall out and the kids are going to stall out. And at a certain point, you're not machines, you're human, and that's going to be natural. And you just have to let it it will start moving again. Getting stressed and pointing out what you're not getting done for the incentive doesn't help.
You don't want to turn it into a chore or like you're cajoling them.
Or a burden.
Yeah.
Then it won't be fun. All of this has to feel fun, like a game. And sometimes I'm not fun, in which case I need to shut my mouth. Like when I, as a teacher, feel frustration, like even I happen to have our kids in class, and our kids can get frustrated with like how happy I am at school because they feel like it's not real.
Yeah, they do think you're a dork.
But they only know that because they know the real me that gets frustrated. Like that can't, like, me at school can be disappointed, but that's concerning behavior. That's never concerning the learning. My kids, we never ever, if I do, it's a really bad deal if I ever were to show frustration due to their struggles with the learning.
Right.
Because they'll quit sooner than I'll quit. I'm an adult.
Don't show frustration.
It's hard. I'm not going to say that's not hard. It's probably why I'm such a big dork. It's because I've learned when I feel frustrated, I just get more happy. Like with the learning, if a kid is struggling with behavior, we're not talking about that. We're talking.
We already separated behavior from incentives.
Okay.
So let's recap.
All right, recap us.
You're gonna gamify.
I almost hesitate to use that word because it's been used wrong so much.
I mean, it was probably used right, it just wasn't executed correctly.
Okay.
Really, this is how
people think it's like putting the learning online and making an online game for kids with the learning. No.
It's making learning like Super Mario Brothers.
Yes.
So you have an incentive, you have a goal to rescue the princess.
Yes, but you don't talk about that.
First, you give immediate feedback.
Yes.
That's roughly corresponds to the age of the kid.
Yep.
The first goals or the first tasks that they're getting feedback on are super achievable.
Yeah, because they have to learn the system. They have to learn, like with my kindergartners, like they don't even know, like the feedback isn't even necessarily me. It doesn't feel, it feels instantaneously. There's instantaneous acknowledgement that they did something, that they went off by themselves and followed a direction independently and did something.
Just like the Goombas and the Koopas. Just like a video game. Instant feedback.
Okay. Yeah.
After some amount of success, you give them something to make the reward, the incentive seem more tangible. Like picking out something that's going to be an element of the incentive, or building up a component of the incentive as their credit. Kind of like when you get to level 1-4 and there's a castle in the music hall area and you defeat Bowser, but it's not really him. And then your princess is in another castle.
Yes, that's right.
You're going to separate behavior from these incentives. You've got your behavior plan we've talked about quite a bit.
Yes.
Don't mix it in with this. This is not just a generally being good incentive. It's specific to the focused chunks of learning that are providing that instantaneous feedback.
They could be laying F-bombs every other word, but if they are doing the work to the level of your standard, they are still earning whatever the incentive is, and you're dealing with that behavior issue.
You got behavior plans in a different way.
That is a different component. This only is focused on the learning. It does not matter if the child destroys your classroom, but they completed the learning to your level and your standard, then they would still get whatever the little exposure is to the incentive.
They need to feel like the feedback needs to be on a individual basis. It can't be like hey, we all need to be good, and if one person is not good, then we don't get reward.
Or a system where clearly that's what should happen. Like if the system were to say like, we all have to earn an 80%, this is what I would say not to do. We all have to earn an 80%.
Right.
And then there's one kid who clearly did not earn 80%.
And you just ignore them?
Yeah, then that's violating the rule. So
Like, it can be a collective reward, but the contribution to the individual to the success is judged at an individual basis.
right. If I were to connect it to something like that, I would say like each student grows by a certain percentage from pre to post test. But even that, it's hard. It's better when it's an actual thing where the kid can, like if you allow retesting, so I've done that, like because I allow kids to retest, the component that they have to earn might be that they have to get like a 40% increase in their score from pre to post, but that their post, if they're not at that gain, then we do more learning and more work and they reassess. That's trickier, so I discourage people from doing that.
It's a bunch of detail for the recap.
It's a bunch of, sorry.
The point, individual evaluation.
Yes.
Not group evaluation.
Thank you for keeping me on track, Jared.
Right? Like that's the key, is it's not, either way the group thing fails. Because either one person wrecks it or one person tries to wreck it and you ignore it. And then that means that people can hide and it doesn't motivate them the same way.
Or one person doesn't feel like they have a huge contributing factor.
Right.
Yes.
Don't make the reward and the incentive into a burden by saying like, oh, don't you guys want to rescue the princess? Come on.
Correct.
Like it that will ruin everything.
Yes.
And generally related to that is just don't show your frustration.
Correct.
Everything is, to the extent possible, is just a natural consequence of the game design.
Yes.
Even if they know you're the game designer, once the game's built, it just plays out really irrespective of what you want it to do. It's what you designed it to do.
Correct.
And that means that nothing is personal and it helps motivate people better.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I'm excited to talk about the plan probably next time, right? For your like bridge challenge thing.
Yeah. Well, I probably should limit it to just the bridge one, but yeah, you can do something similar with puzzles. So it could apply to other things. But
bridge thing.
Yes.
Next time
on Teacher Talk.
Thank you, Johanna.
Thank you, Jared.
Johanna, do you get questions from listeners ever?
Yes, we do.
How do those listeners send you questions?
They send us an email.
Where does that email go?
teachertalk4teachers@gmail.com.
But wait, what kind of 4? How do I do 4?
All of the 4s. They can do a number 4. They can write the word FOR, or they can do FOUR, even though that one doesn't quite make sense.
Well, perfect. teachertalk4teachers@gmail.com.
Yes.
Thank you, Johanna.
Thank you, Jared.
Teacher Talk, the podcast for teachers who are lifers but still want to have a life.